off the cuff. Yeah, so imaginational intelligence, the imaginal
And
function.
and 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 before we started recording, what you were saying was, redefining intelligence, or at a shift, a shift, an eruption that redefines intelligence. And so, when you say that, I can't help but think of Eleanor Robbins talking about,
Mhm.
imagination, and she says the imaginal realm. She wrote an article called "Art is Fixing the Consciousness Contract," which is so good on her Substack, How to Go Home. But in it, she basically says it's the imaginal realm that fixes the consciousness contract. Also, I was thinking at the same time, because I wrote this to somebody today. They were saying, they wrote me on LinkedIn and said, "Have you seen so and so?" And they were talking about like science meets art meets environment and blah 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 and all this. And the interesting thing about that is I just so happen to be reading a lot of Sophia Batalha's stuff lately.
Mhm.
And she writes on eco mythos, eco mythic, metaphors and stories and images. And the concept being is like we live today by these, huge myths and metaphors that are very mono metaphor, monomythic. Uh, but the reality is that real myth is embedded in ecology, and so embodied, the
Mm.
whole nine yards, right? And so that intelligence is obviously an active, it's a catonic, but for me, it's like this imaginal thing. It's like until we understand that our intelligence is outside of this realm and the moon is imaginalis, then, it's like we don't really tap into the full. And I think that's what the eruption of intelligence is. And that's, God, it just could go off in a crazy place because
Yeah.
yeah, because, and I'll just shut up after this. It's like, obviously, right now, we also have the counter of intelligence is being expanded through artificial intelligence. That's how we define intelligence. It's the way we imagine intelligence. So we fashion this thing that is the imagination of what we think intelligence is under modernity, coloniality, capture, clearing, Erin Manning's clearing, and all this, right? And, but if you see intelligence a completely different way, then, would we have formed this? Would we have formed something different? Would we have built a different technology? Would we have formed a technology at all? Do we already have that technology, et cetera, right?
Yeah. It's always kind of it, like, grinds my gears when people will dismiss semantics because the place where form and identity
That's
meets
right.
meaning, like a
That's right.
subject, right?
That's right.
So, imagination is required to, like, vision possibility.
Yeah.
Innovation and creativity and imagination and create something literally new, something truly to pull it apart and put it back together, to breathe life into, for something to be alive. That interplay of, and don't get me started on the physical and the sensational that sits beneath that, right? Mind and matter.
They're all
But
tied together, right?
well, they
It's like,
I there it's like multiple intelligences and processing, and then you have
that's
these
right.
specific, let's say, domains. So the imaginational intelligence, the imaginal realm, it's like it's where form takes form in a
That's
sense,
right.
you
That's
know?
right.
And
Well,
semantics and words are like, yeah, meaning. So intelligence
huge.
specifically, it's like,
I mean,
why
we
aren't we
did,
slowing these
you and I
things
obviously
down?
did an interview together, and I published your interview, and, it's
Yeah,
like
yeah.
the big thing I pointed out, well, multiple things, because that interview was so rich. But, when you talk about body cognition and then body semantics, and it's like, I forget where I even pulled that up recently. Was it when I was with Colorado Health Foundation a couple of weeks ago? But I was like, and Rachel Fell, and embodied semantics, and then you say the word jump, and you're already kicking your foot, and all this.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
that's how intelligence actually works at that level. And it's like,
Right.
so imagination, if imagination is holding a realm, a field that is a dimension outside of our present reality, then that's really powerful. And there's a whole set of embodiment and action and liminal emergence that happens in those spaces that can't happen here. Jeremy Johnson has been writing on integral futures and mutations. And he says, we're in relationship with the future, but it doesn't sit here in the present, but it has to manifest in the present because that's
Yep.
the only way that it matters.
Right.
Right. And so, in that sense, we have to sense, meet, perceive those futures in the imaginal realm. And then we live as emissaries from those futures in the present so that we make them alive in our world. And that's why I was like pulling on Sophia Batalha, because she says, we've been so, and this is what you say. This is what you're saying. We're so
I'm saying the same thing.
we're so dissociated. We're so dissociated from that eco mythic. by, the classification, the sameness, and the clearing and control and
Yeah.
capture of
Yeah.
modernity,
Yeah.
that we don't even understand what perception really is. And so
Mhm.
it's a and so to perceive at all, we have to be rerouted back in the eco mythic again. And where and the best thing that we can do is admit to ourselves there has been a totality and dissociation from that. And so what we call perception today, what even is it? At best it's a cheap imitation of what perception is.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, whether intentional or otherwise, or a combination thereof, right? The Enlightenment kind of turned the lights out on the sensing body, and like
That's right.
mind in matter. And we talk
That's
like
it. That's it.
consciousness. It's like, well, what does that mean? Like back
Yeah.
to embodied semantics. It's like the role of hanging out at the waterline and slowing down assumptions and like reclaiming learning and like in the service of. Anyways, I before I forget, I should probably introduce you or like this.
It's too late for that.
It's
It's
too
too
late
late.
for.
It's too late for that now. I love this, by the way. We just
We
get to
can
riff
jump
and
back in.
yeah.
Just we can come back around and jump in. So Frank, my dear friend and wonderful human being, brilliant human being, Frank Spencer the fourth, four,
Yes, we can talk
four,
about that too if you want.
four at TFSX. I always split the S and the F. My brain TFSX, TSFX.
TFSX, yeah.
Yes.
The
What's it?
Future School Experience.
The
That's
future
good.
school experience. Future is
Thank you.
consciousness, and that's what we jam on, and embodied cognition, and
That's my thing, man. It's my thing, man.
yeah,
It's
and
very
it's
Southern. That's my
that's
thing.
my thing. Yes, Southern, guy, brilliant, brilliant human being. So glad to know you. And yeah, just here to jam on, our shared interest orientation work. Yeah, on consciousness, awareness.
No, likewise. I mean,
Yeah.
Rachel, I hope if somebody is watching this, we'll put a link or I'll get you to put a link on your channel of our interview that we did not too long
Mm,
ago as well, where I was interviewing you. We're not really interviewing here; we're just having a great conversation. But the work that you do is so important to its core to futures consciousness. And I know that this is not a term that you use wildly, and it's not necessarily the core of your work, but it's like whether you knew it or not, it is because this is really tapping into all that consciousness is trying to like download into us as conduits. Did you, by the way, recently did you hear Nate Hagen's interview with Ian McGilchrist?
So I'm a McGilchrist fan for the most part, and what's funny about me is like I am not great at engaging external content. I'm just not like I'm in, and I'll follow threads when they like call or grab me,
Yeah.
but I'm like there's this weird propensity to play with and be in the inner world a little more. So long story short, McGilchrist fan, but like no.
Otherwise, you would see me at a conference, never go to a session because I
Yeah.
don't sit through people talking in conference. I would sit for you. I would sit for you. Don't worry. I would sit for you. I would sit for you.
You didn't, I would get it. I would get it.
But otherwise, I'm out the door, meeting a Rachel Fallon, walking in the
Uh,
streets and getting
well,
pizza. And
that's
that was the important part.
that's the important part. Yeah. Yeah.
But McGilchrist says, like, and you can see this look on Nate's face. And I'm not saying Nate doesn't believe this, but it's like, I don't think he thought the interview was going here. And you can see this, like, ooh, like he like gets a little freaked out. But it was Nate that put the clip online. So he just clips this one little part where McGilchrist says, so consciousness obviously does not come exclusively from, nor does it originate from the cognitive, the neurological. It doesn't come from there and it obviously doesn't because it's clearly not the same thing. It's not cognition in that sense,
Right.
pure cognition as we would,
Right.
computational, neurological, blah, blah, blah. He said, so, but I'll take you a step further. He said, consciousness is like water. So first of all, it's an irreducible and fundamental dynamic of the cosmos.
Hmm.
Nate's already like, what?
Eyes widening.
Yeah, he's like, what?
Yeah.
What? And he goes, but I'll take it a step further. He said, water can take on three forms, right? We know it in three forms. We know as steam, you can't see it. As a matter of fact, you're in water right now. You're breathing water. If you didn't have water in the air, you would die. And then it, becomes, liquid, runs through your hand. And then also it can become a solid, right? And he said, so if consciousness is always continuously cosmologically seeking to manifest itself through life, and
Mhm.
life is the outgrowth of consciousness, which is, biocentrism, biocosmology, and all this fits right into all of that. Then matter, and as a matter of fact, we are matter beings are the solid form of consciousness. We are consciousness's solid manifestation. So matter comes from consciousness. And Nate Hagen looks like he's about to give birth to a cow or something. It was really wild. And I was like,
Fantastic.
yes, yes, this is
Yes.
it. And the reason that's so important is because you're what you do, you're already light years ahead of all of this. But like I love inviting you into my world because my colleagues, some beautiful people all around me in the futures field, in the foresight field,
Uh-huh.
can get very, not all of them, but there's different kinds of practitioners in every field,
Oh
right?
yeah, yeah.
But a lot of foresight has been, as a lot of disciplines has been captured by the dominant narrative of legitimization.
Oh,
And so
sure.
it's like, I already know what I want you to tell me because we're trying to make relevant the thing we do. So tell me trends or whatever, and then I'm going to use them to maintain the relevance of the status quo of the basic,
Right.
the,
Right.
the
Right.
BAU. And
Yeah.
so, and that's not how consciousness
No.
sees
No. No.
revelatory change, imaginal anticipation, transformation
Yeah.
realities, right? Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Runaway representational intelligence, right? Like, yep, that thing. Yeah, and as we were talking about before I hit record, it's like it is this question that I personally and like in my work, I'm orbiting like, where does this exploration fit in? And the answer is everywhere. But
Everywhere.
there is this question of like, you know, learning in the service of, and sort of this like, it's sort of like, yeah, the meta crisis, all the stuff. It's like, yeah, it's like where and but this is the most relevant thing a human being I think can explore is like, how does this living human technology work, And not that we
That's
have all of the answers, but that umwelt of the human perceptual, vessel, which is what this is. And yes, like to take it into the, energy and matter, two forms of the same thing, how matter is an expression and density is an expression of shapes and condensation. Like there's a fourth form ish of water that lives in your body that is like,
that's right.
helps hold everything together.
Literally, and
Yeah.
it's in an emotional state, that form of water as well. And so in that sense, semantics, gives birth to matter as well, and the whole nine yards. And it's just, and that's why this is so important, because I think a lot of people in my field, and this is what I get jazzed about, is perception and where it's coming from, where it's actually coming from,
Yeah.
and not and rerouting it back into where it's actually coming from, and not where modernity says it comes from.
Yeah.
Because when we misperceive perception, then clearly, obviously, that the most basic thing is we not only we're not seeing the right thing, we're not seeing anything.
Yeah.
And but that's why your work is so important, what I do and what we do, and it's just so profound. So
Hey, thanks, Frank. Yeah. Yeah. The slow exploration stuff, being so pragmatic and, you know, the question of how being implicitly more dimensional and having more movement than what. So like reduction is like, what is perception? It's like, how does perception work? Like I default to this physiologic interest of like a word, of a body, of a,
yeah,
and it's like perception is process. So it's like it's
that's
not a
yeah,
single monolithic thing. It's like, well, I remember when I stumbled across the like very like it seriously life altering connection of like, body as sub and unconscious and doors of perception, like Huxley talks about in this, starting to understand that, afferent and efferent processing and the vagus nerve runs 80% and
mm,
the sensing body is like moving so quickly by the time something, enters that excess capacity of like conscious cognition. And so this question of like, can I start to play with my own intelligence? What is intelligence? Not just in this theoretical or conceptual, but a
that's right.
truly
That's
embodied experience, going through some pretty profound physical symptoms, some psychological stuff, a certain kind of positive disintegration. And Yeah, that sort of it's like, well, this is the instrument essentially. It's like how it's so but it's so uncomfortable because it like takes us into this space of
Yeah.
like, how does a human work? And like ultimately, what is a human? Are we gonna answer that? But like, how does human perception work?
I love that you said that because I was reading a post yesterday, and it's so very, again, to sort of present it from something I've been doing for a long time, futures thinking, foresight, and that kind of realm, is very popular in this realm for the general practitioner to glom onto a very sci-fi vision. Jeremy Johnson was even saying in a post today, he said modernity is addicted to forward and up, but the future is rooted in present and past as well. Not just like what already happened will tell us what's going to happen next. It's not about that. It's not about events, and it's not about time. It's about, yes, definitely it's still forward, but it's rooted in ancestralism, and it's rooted in the reality of connection, the evo, realities of liminality. And so it's very easy for, a practitioner to say like, oh, and this one particular post this is a great example of it. People are only scared of artificial intelligence just like they were scared of any new technology because they are afraid of what it might take away our human, exceptionality. But the truth of the matter is that to be human has always been to be intimately tied to technology and where technology takes us. We're only human because of technology. And I was like, what? Unless you're defining technology a different way, that
Well,
really trips.
there's the yeah, what's the technology of a bat's perception?
Yeah,
What's the relational technology at
yeah,
play?
that's right.
And yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
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 Well,
So if you're defining
is an
technology that
algorithm
way, then I'm cool to go down the rabbit hole with you here because there's a
right.
lot more than meets the eye. And it's very easy to get off on this. But my point was, what does it mean to be human? And and as Jeremy says, and as you're saying, there's so much wrapped up in that, and then that means that futures consciousness and what is unfolding is coming from the realm of experience and not necessarily the time space spatio-temporal. It's experiential. So
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's fascinating stuff, like, the irony of a creature with so much potential to understand its own Umwelt and its own sort of, like, meta processing, and then, obviously, neurodiversity enters the chat, and everybody's different, right? But, like, it's like the capacity for us to actually understand and integrate that, and then the distance and the disconnect between that and, like, where we are and how we actually understand I have a friend, he just shorthands it secondary intelligence, right? This sort of
mm,
I
mm,
think therefore I am, it's the confluence of like uh, sense of self, the sensing body is sort of, erased from the chat. And then you have representational intelligence run amok,
that's right.
essentially.
That's right.
So everything is more about identity and representation than it is about the actual direct experience beneath the language and we can talk about the water line, right? Which is the more I go, the more I'm like that. If I start a solo podcast or something, that should be the name of it. Like probably. But all that to say, right, there is this sort of like invitation to come down and out of that and to relate with ourselves differently and with each other. And it's like, yeah, like co-created futures. Here we
So
go.
so tell us about your experience with that then, because this has been going on for a while with you, and it's like we could talk about this, but I would love to hear, it's like because you posed a question, what does it mean to be human?
Yeah.
And this is what it means to be human. There was no definition there, but we started down the road.
Yeah.
And so what has been your experience in like going beneath the waterline and
Oh. Oh,
and
yeah.
getting away from that representational intelligence?
Yeah. Well, I can hang out and observe and be a part of where they play, the confluence. And I do think that actually is the imaginal realm, or I think that's imaginational intelligence
Right.
at work. And I call it the waterline, this bottom up processing. If we think of like, you know, distal to medial, my body's swimming in a sea of physics. It's a different consciousness paradigm. And like
Yeah.
I love the Orko-R theory and like Penrose and Hameroff and the microtubules. And it's like,
Yeah.
the sensing body is so exquisitely intelligent. So that's more than a reframe, that's a paradigm shift, but
That's
I'm
a
here
paradigm
for
shift.
it, right?
That's
It's
a
like
paradigm shift.
I'm here for it. It's
That's what I'm
far more
asking. Yeah. That's what
logical. It's
yeah.
far more it's far more logical than anything that we're working with now.
Yeah.
And it
That's right.
doesn't mean that we have all the answers, but there is
No.
place where direct experience meets interpretation and form. And can we learn to like slow that down and play in that space? Do I give myself permission to
Mm,
inhabit that space, to play in it? Can I honor the multiplicity of what's there without needing to like force coherence or an answer too
yes.
quickly? Am I choosing more to shape something? Am I allowing what emerges to take its own form in its own time?
Yeah.
That would take a little more patience. Now we're playing with emergence and design and the very zoomed in sort of like dance of those things.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, but that is, do you give yourself permission to engage with your own processing? And I think that's as
Yes.
much imaginational as, like, the
Oh,
what
it is.
comes out of it. It is
Yeah.
well, like, in the Warm Data Labs, I think the seriously one of the most, like, underrated, but, like, incredibly influential aspects of why that works so well is the ability to get up and leave the circle whenever you want to.
It's this. Yeah. It's amazing.
Yeah, it's so the will, the will to participate and, like, to come out of a control paradigm and into a
Yeah.
co-creative one. Yeah,
We
fascinating.
did that at the Alive conference
Oh,
that
yeah?
we held in Asheville at the end of April, and so I introduced people to Warm Data there as well because we used the ALIVE acronym sort of as our warm data. It's like, what does it mean to be abductive in a changing world? What does it mean to be liminal in a changing world, interconnected, vibrant,
Yeah.
in consciousness and emergent? But yeah, I mean, that is the part that works so well is to watch people be able to say like, this is time for me to leave and connect to something else, and then connecting into a space, the spaces in between that
Mhm.
were already in progress because that's reality, right?
Yeah.
Uh, but listening to you talk though, it's like, and I feel like I'm in the interview seat again now, but I'm just so interested because
It's your default,
yes, go down that rabbit hole, the good rabbit hole. It's the rabbit hole everybody should be in. We should all be in the rabbit hole. The more you it's scary, but then you get a little taste of it, and it's like you got that, and then you go scarier, and then you get that, you got scared of letting go of only individual identity and really getting a sense outside of, you know, needing to do, hallucinogenics or anything like that, which is
Mhm.
fine. But I mean, not even having to be there and getting a sense of like, oh my God, I really am connected. I was hearing a Lakota elder the other day, and he was saying in the Lakota language, there's no word for wild or wilding because that wouldn't make sense. Everything's already wild.
Mhm.
So there is no word for wild. The smallest of molecules and the largest of hyper objects are all in community with one another, and there
Yeah,
is no
yeah.
individualism in that sense.
Right.
And I don't think that he was saying that there isn't, the manifestation of the individual, but individualism in that sense. And so you were going there, but
Uh,
question for you is, like how do you help somebody to start going down that road and, not forcing because they may not be ready to hear any of that, but to start to
Mhm.
walk out this like, hey,
Yeah.
there to be human doesn't mean to be Frank, necessarily, or
Mhm.
just Vanessa, but it's like this is when you're
Yeah.
having this or Rachel or whoever, but it's like this is when you're having this profound sense of what it means to be embodied in the imaginal realm and in
Yeah.
consciousness. And yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, wow, what a question, number 1. Number 2, like, pragmatic non-duality is like many things can be true at once.
Yeah.
And it's like, I don't know that my cells aren't sentient. Redefining intelligence, there's an aliveness that I can connect with that courses through my body. So too, I know with reasonable certainty that like this ecosystemic sort of, I think the word is stigmergy, like collection of all the things comprises a Rachel, which has been the same and different through time. And like
Right.
this stuff does get you up into the realm of existential health, such that like, yeah, I reckon with death. It's like, and that reckoning with death gives life meaning,
Oh,
and there is this sort of like invitation to explore in this existential realm and to develop sovereignty Fear is a part of that because you acknowledge time, you acknowledge corporeal form, you acknowledge this stuff, and like to connect the dots in a way that embodied association and meaning for each person to go on that journey. So
Mm,
rewarding to hold that
yeah,
non-duality in the physical body, to
yeah,
feel, and I think at its best without the kind of all of the stuff around control and corruption, right? It's like spirituality and certain expressions of like, the embodiment of a religious doctrine can take us into that place, right? So,
yeah,
science and spirituality coming from this place of wanting to explore, can we ever
yes,
fully know? Are we solving consciousness? Are we like checking off like what are we doing here? Learning in the service of what? And it's like, okay, yeah, like there is this what is possible for me in this lifetime as the expression of Rachel. And like can I deal with the mutability of it? Also, it's like that fear of that identity or that ego layer of like
yes,
the
that's right.
mutability, not just of outside conditions, but like of your own processing, you
Although,
know?
I mean, I think that that cuts to the core of what I moved this all everything you said was great, but yeah, because mm, if anybody's listening to this and still here,
It's all right.
when you said, you know, what is defined as an individual
Uh-huh.
comprised of many parts, sentient parts potentially that makes up Rachel Fell, but has changed over time because that's profound. Because like when you look back over your life and you think about when I was 5 or when I was 10 or when I was 15, and you're like, oh, I did this thing back then or I acted different. It's like literally you were a different person.
Right, right.
And, so you've lived multiple lives in one unit, you know?
Mhm.
And in that sense, it's wild because you get to have this very deep experience of a multiplicity of lifetimes.
Yeah,
And I do think also, the exploration of the death is just so profoundly necessary. And of course, in our, patriarchal, colonial capture system and narrative, we avoid that topic as much as we possibly can, which is sad because it is so integral to the entire uh, process,
right.
processual ontology, processual biology, and processual philosophy. Because
I call it the journey of becoming elder. Same thing. Different language, same thing. Yeah.
same thing, and and again, not to harp on futures, but it's like one of the sci-fi future things is like how can we live forever and defeat death? And death and it's just that totally misses the whole, and
Yeah.
that goes back to Jeremy Johnson saying like the future is
Mhm.
capturing something that of before. It's not the past, and it's not a past event. It's a
Mhm.
profound connection to
Right.
life itself,
Right.
which death is an integral part of. So
One of my favorite, he does a lot of, like, an anatomy expert, his name's Gil Headley, he's does a lot of, like, dissection work and,
you were telling me, yeah,
I've heard him say, it's like death as this adventure, this sort of next frontier. There's a plane, it's quite loud, I don't know if you can hear it.
I
Um,
cannot.
Yay, okay, good.
Cuts it right out.
Quite loud. Good job, Zoom. The joke or the sort of it's like 2 twins, they're, like, about to be born, and one says to the other twin, "Do you think there's life after birth?"
Yeah,
Right? But
yeah,
this flexibility or this, like, control over identity or identity as an object, as a product, now
that's
we're in
right.
it's like in a much healthier paradigm where we understood that we are matter is consciousness expressed and alive over time and
That's
density
right.
form, because that's what it is, right? It's like my line, like, it doesn't I'm not some, like I'm not of my mother and my grandmother and all the way back and back, so it's like I'm a leaf on a tree that's
That's right.
right? But it's not like I am not forged and formed, and now we're in epigenetics territory and all that kind of
That's
stuff,
right.
right?
That's right.
Um,
We
but it's
brought it full circle. We
full
brought it full
circle,
c
right?
we
I love it.
did. We
I love it. Yeah, the mutability of self. It's like, yeah, less control, more like what's consciousness expressing through me, and how am I stewarding that? You
What
know?
is consciousness expressing through me? What is it designed to express through me?
Mm,
And I think that's why I think features consciousness as a part of consciousness, or maybe just a way to describe consciousness itself, because it's like, what is it trying to express?
yeah.
So that word futures is probably doesn't do service to this idea that consciousness itself is a revelatory, transformational experience of past, present, future, not events, but connections, and and that's profound. And in that sense, it's like when we let go of that, and like I said, we brought it full circle. We understand that consciousness is that matter is manifestation of consciousness. Then it opens up that metaphysical realm to us completely, and it's a whole different game,
Whole different
paradigm
game.
shift is what you said. Yeah,
Total paradigm shift, and also like mind into matter and being able to like hang out at that waterline or in that where like the bottom up and the top down processing meet, and to bring the metacognition out of the representational and the sort of like, to
yeah,
actually bring it to where things truly render, let's
yeah,
say. But I want to
yes.
really quickly, and I'm aware of time, and I think I love what you say. Like, if anybody's still with us, like, we'll see what happens, right?
You can edit, Rachel. You can
I can
edit.
totally edit. I can learn how to edit. This is great. This is good. This is good practice. Futures is totally relevant to consciousness, and it can't not go along because I think learning in the service of, so the stewardship part, it's like, what does consciousness want to express through me? And this fundamental like tension or inability that we have had for a long time, mostly to reconcile like the divinity in matter, but also like the choice aspect of being a human, like free will and choice. It's like fate is the fractal dance of that through eons and time and the
That's
scale,
right.
the whole thing, right? It's like this vector seems to have some sort of setting where I can affect, I can influence, right? So consciousness, we have to consider influence, and that's futures. Like,
That is futures to
yeah,
me, and
yeah.
you get it more quicker than a lot do. Which also, like, I also am aware of time, but although I could talk to you forever, but that brings us to agency. I don't even know if you said that word, agency, but
Mhm.
it's like
Yeah.
in everything that we've been talking about. Again, when we dissociate relationality from the mythic, it's no longer eco mythic. Then agency becomes completely personalized. Not even so much even individualized, but personalized. And then we miss that the inactive mind. The agency comes in inactive mind. So it's collective, cooperative, collaborative, co-creative. Um,
Regardless if you're participating or not. Like,
regardless if you're
it's
participating,
co-create,
that
right?
is actually the key.
Yeah,
That's the key.
yeah.
Regardless of you're participating or not, you are agent, you're agentic. And so that's why this paradigm shift is so powerful and critical.
Yeah, huge, huge.
Yeah.
I think you're using the word agency, and I could say like free will is the capacity for
Yeah.
choice.
Yeah.
So say it's not the choice itself, it's the like capacity for it.
That's right.
And
That's
that's
right.
there's nowhere else that can come from than where direct experience is meeting representation if it's
That's
going to
right.
be as powerful and authentic and sort of carry, but it is that place where like you slow it down. It's like, okay, how do I want to move from here?
Yeah, it's powerful. It's
Yeah,
totally powerful.
it's good stuff.
We could talk forever, for
It's true.
sure.
And we
Yeah.
will again if you're up for it. I would love to do this again as
Oh,
whatever this becomes
yeah.
evolves. I'm sure us jamming semi frequently would be a great addition to it. So
I'm totally in. You know
love
it.
it.
So, yeah.
Awesome. Awesome. Thanks so much, Frank. It was great to see you.
Well, it's good to see you too, always.